Hey, what's up guys? Node Investor here. Time for another update on the cryptocurrency markets. We're going to look at Bitcoin. We'll look at a few of the alt names, but all around I'm getting a little defensive here. We've had a very nice run for a few days. Bitcoin has had a 20+% move off of the lows. And I started signaling yesterday to the Slack group saying, hey, we're a little bit long on this run here. I would not be surprised to see a little bit more of a pullback. And then we had one more push higher today going into the morning right around that 3,900 mark, and we're starting to see the pullback now. So we'll look at some of the various levels. We'll look at a few of the alts and just some of my thoughts here. It's been an interesting day in some of the other markets. I pretty much didn't trade crypto today, just kind of sitting tight, being patient, letting this play out. Booked most of the gains on the other positions, but was a very busy day in the stock market side of the world with the Fed speaking and just some of the volatility there. And so that's been most of my day today, but keeping an eye on BTC here. I do have a small short position open on the Ethereum side. We'll take a look at that here, and that's just more of a hedge at this point. So looking at the cryptocurrency market cap first, green across the board still, even with this pullback here over the last 24 hours has been a good move, net positive. Bitcoin Cash up 34%. And so if you're tracking the two various Bitcoin names, this is the equivalent of Bitcoin Cash ABC, but having a very strong move here and seeing some volatility across the board. I did enter a few new trades yesterday. They hit the targets very quickly and just pulled right back in, so that began to signal that we were starting to see a little bit of selling pressure showing up here as more and more of these names are pumping. Nonetheless, there's been a couple of other big ones here today. Waves just continues to stair step higher. STRAT had a big move today, and there's been a handful of others. We saw Zilliqa yesterday, nice little pump getting into Coinbase, and so we'll take a look at a few of those here. But first, let's take a look at the chart for Bitcoin. Here on the chart is the 4-hour view of BTC on Coinbase, and yesterday I mentioned we were looking at this nice consolidation here, and it was exactly what the bulls wanted to see. We had a rally right up into this prior resistance level here, and that's where the pause started to take place, and that came on the back of a very strong, high volume, very quick move right to that 3,600 level. That's where we started to consolidate. And so yesterday I was pointing out that really the levels we wanted to be watching was a tight consolidation in the upper end of this range, and didn't want to see it get much below that $3,400 level. It played out almost perfectly there. We saw that tight consolidation. It let some of the indicators cool off. The RSI cooled off a little bit there. The MACD cooled off. You also saw the moving averages start catching up, and then that allowed for a push over the next resistance level. And then we saw that quick move to the next level around that 3,800 level. And so that was really the next leg up. But I started to see a slight divergence as we started to push into this next zone. I also noticed that prices were getting a little bit extended here, especially on the 4-hour chart and especially on the 1 hour. And so it just told me that, hey, we're probably due for a little bit more of a pause here. This was kind of the first step in setting up another rally. Now it's getting a little choppier, seeing a little bit more selling pressure coming in, some more volumes kicking in here at the highs. You're seeing some profit taking, and that's not unexpected. When you look at this move from the low here on December 15th to the peak this earlier today here, up 25%, and that's a very strong move, and that's considering many of the other altcoins were outperforming as Bitcoin was running higher. And so all in all, it's been a good week for the trading side of things. I happened to catch a few very nice trades, and so I figured, just kind of sit tight, book some gains, and be patient, let this thing settle out. Not necessarily saying it's going to just fully correct here and come all the way back down to the lows, and so there could be a couple of levels to be watching here. First one, of course, is a pullback right into this 10 EMA level. Below that, somewhere in between these two, which would also correspond with the high of this resistance here, so this breakout. So that's kind of the first target that I'm looking at, right around that high 3600s down to around that mid $3,500 range. I'll pull back there. That'll be the first test. We want to see this level hold as support and then some consolidation in this range. If it starts to get below that, then you're not going to want to see prices get much below that 3450 level. Below that, it's going to really begin to fully retrace. It's going to kind of signal the end of this little uptrend that we've seen here on this 4-hour chart. And so it's been a nice move, but at this point, I'm a little bit more defensive now. I'm not as aggressive in terms of jumping in on some of these setups as we were just over the last couple of days. And so just keep that in mind. Not saying that this is over. The trend technically is still in place. You're seeing a series of higher highs and higher lows, still above the moving averages. Moving averages are still trending higher, so got to give it the benefit of the doubt. I'm just a little bit more cautious now that we've seen this nice run. I think we're due for a little bit of a pause here at least and let things kind of consolidate, cool off. Best case scenario would be some tight price action up in this range. Then this would allow for a push higher. The next big level to be watching is that psychological 4K level. Back into the 4Ks would be a very positive thing for the Bitcoin price here, just because we've had this dip. We broke that support, went below that 3,300 briefly, and then just quickly shot right back. That really turned the corner, put the momentum back in favor of the bulls here, and we've managed to clear several levels of resistance along the way up. Very positive action, and approaching that 4K level would be a significant win in terms of kind of just changing some of the sentiment that we've seen here. Remember in my weekend video, I posted how we were just in the dumps here over the weekend. People were just, that's it, I've had enough, throwing in the towel, can't take the pain anymore. Heard a lot of those stories, and I was kind of saying, hey, we're probably due for a little bit of a bounce here. Just we tend to see that when those sentiment readings hit the extremes, and it's just everywhere. It's in the media, it's all over Twitter, the comments, you know, the private group chats. It's just it was very much in one direction. Everyone started calling for, you know, 2,500, 1,500. And I'm not saying we don't ultimately get there, but we were due for a little bit of a bounce, hitting this kind of intermediate low for now. And we saw that. Now we're looking at the other side, potentially seeing a top here. And how far down do we go is yet to be seen. So I'm looking at a few levels. I just covered those. On the daily chart, you'll want to notice that this rally has paused right at that 22 EMA. You saw a wick going above it and pulling right back in. And so on this daily chart, and that volume is much higher here too. So again, a lot of selling volume starting to come in here. We'll want to see a higher low set on that daily chart. For me, the level that I absolutely want to see it hold would be the most positive. No lower than 34.50 in and around there. If it can set a higher daily low around that point and then start to rally, things will look pretty good here in the bigger picture. And this is the first step in turning the broader downtrend, turning the corner here. Notice we've been in this very strong downtrend for the last month or so, month plus now. And this is the first time that the moving average, the 10 EMA on the daily chart, is starting to tick upward. And so that's just the first step in starting to turn the corner here. This is the first time since that major break that the daily price points have been closing above the 10 EMA as well. So for the last 3 days, we've seen that happen. Very positive, an important first step in turning the corner here. Next, what you want to see is prices staying above this level, letting prices move sideways for a little bit, perhaps letting this moving average start going flat as opposed to downward at a downward 45-degree angle or whatever, and ultimately getting above that 22 EMA would be the best scenario. So one day at a time, as I like to say it here. 4-hour chart still looking a little bit toppy. If you go to the 1-hour chart, many of the altcoin names have this similar pattern. Some of them are having a small head and shoulder type of pattern being built at the top here on this 1-hour view. And so this just leads me to believe we're going to see a little bit more downside, but you guys just be cautious. Don't rush into some of these and don't trade those breakouts or chase those breakouts. The pullback entries seem to be working a little bit better here as of late. So let's take a look at a few of the alts here. So first off, looking at Ethereum here, again, I did enter a hedge. And what I was looking at here today is we had this rally, and late yesterday I was seeing this pause. I thought maybe this is the top. And then this morning, waking up, I saw one more big push higher. A lot of volume came in here near the top. It started to pull back. And so what I was looking for was that second rally attempt that would have failed below this level. So I was looking for a lower high. We saw that here a few hours ago. It started to peter out. When I saw that stalling started to show up here on a lower high, that's where I entered my short. Decided to cover there with a slight hedge. And so just looking for a pullback lower on this chart here. Breaking below this, or a closing below, it could wick below, but closing below that 101 to 100 level. Then the next big support level is all the way down here to around 96. And so somewhere in between there is what I'm looking at here. If we do a measured move on this, and again, this is just a rough estimate. Ultimately, I go based on price action when I'm looking at my targets. But if you do a measured move, you can see that gets us below that 60, that 96 level. You're looking at more like 95 or so. So that's what I'm looking at on Ethereum. Bitcoin Cash, very strong day today here. This is the 1 hour view, but you can see here over the last several days has had a very strong move. I mean, 80% to the peak here from the lows on the 17th here. So very strong move here over the last couple of days, and that really kicked in here in high gear today, stair-stepping its way higher. Still technically in an uptrend, seen some big volume here near the highs. That tends to signify a little bit of climactic action. And so this may follow suit if the regular market decides to correct the Bitcoin. And so some of the trades that I was in this week, we saw Binance coin have a nice breakout here, and so managed to catch this one on the breakout, and it moved very quickly yesterday right up into that 618 retracement level on the bounce, and then very quickly began to reverse. That was a red flag for me, so started to get out of the way there, and we've seen a lower high on this bounce. But that was a big breakout, and for it to just fully reverse on high volume was not a positive sign. Looking at that 4 hour chart, this is the pattern I was looking at on the 4 hour chart. Very nice setup. Volume came in, pushed higher. The good news is on the pullback, the volume was lower, and so that's the one positive. But if the overall market begins to pull in, I think this one will be under pressure here as well. Another name was ZIL. Now, ZIL, again, it just happened to coincide with the live stream I was doing for the group yesterday. And this is the second time it's happened. It happened when we were on the Zcash trade during the middle of the live stream. Coinbase announced that they were adding Zcash, and we saw that pump happening real time. We booked it. And then again yesterday, I had just entered the ZIL trade. I was probably in the trade all about 30 minutes when went live with the group, and then sure enough, we were looking at the chart real time, and this big candle just started to show up, and so sold into some of that there. On that strength is kind of the best play generally with these Coinbase names. But thank you, Coinbase, for adding that very quickly after I entered the trade. But the reason for entering the trade really was I was watching this setup here over the last couple of days, and it was really starting to test this resistance here. We saw a big wick over it, and I decided to jump in, and sure enough, just a quick move happened quickly after that. If we go to the 15-minute chart, this is where I was entering here. At this point, I was looking at this starting to break out of that range. It was looking positive, so I jumped in there, and then we saw that big green candle. So big move there, but we're seeing this very often, and the pumps are getting smaller and smaller with every Coinbase addition. I mean, this was a nice move, but it was only 10%. In the past, we've seen 20-30% moves very quickly on some of those Coinbase names, and for ZIL to be such a small cap name and only move 10% on that news was not really that big of a move. And so just kind of interesting to note there. There was a few others that were added at the same time. We saw Golem being added. That one also had a big run, gave most of that move back up. Not surprising there. Maker and Maker Die were some of those other two that were added yesterday by Coinbase. Another name that I was on was Stellar, and again, look at what happened here. So jumped on this trade here. I was watching this as a pullback entry. Many of these names were running higher, and they would pull back. They'd have a break higher, and they'd pull back. I saw this little double bottom forming on the 1 hour chart here. On the 4 hour chart, it was forming a nice bull flag pullback entry. Once volume started to kick in, I jumped in on this one, and very shortly after jumping in, it went straight to the target that I had set out, and very quickly just pulled right back in. And so again, that was another red flag. Cardano was another trade I was in during the same time. Did the same thing. Jumped in, broke out very quickly, and then just started to really correct as soon as it went up a little bit there. So just signaling that some of these moves were starting to get a little tired here, running into some selling pressure as those pumps were being sold into. And so just a little bit of a red flag when I start to see those underlying technicals and some of that price action showing up in a lot of the breakouts, just tells me that the market's getting a little tired, probably due for some more consolidations. Stratus, another name that was moving very strongly today, breaking out of a double bottom type of pattern here. Let me go to the Bittrex chart. So on Bittrex, doesn't have that big wick, makes it a little bit easier there, but when we were looking at this, yesterday was already moving strongly and was confirming, was already breaking above this neckline here on this double bottom type of pattern here in the big picture, and has just pushed right through. If you go to the daily chart, that's what I was looking at here on the daily chart. You saw this big low here, setting a higher low, and then just really started to go up the right side here with some good volume yesterday, and then today following suit, clearing the next couple of resistance levels. One of the strongest names here today, just on this single daily candle at the highs earlier, was up 38%. from the lows of this double bottom low here. A very strong name, up almost 100%, 97% here in 4 days. So very strong move, and we're seeing a lot of these, which is great to see. Finally, good to see some green across the board. It's been a rough couple of weeks, couple of months, and we have these small couple of days of rallying, and so you just got to be patient in between those. But when they start to show up, got to stay active and attentive. It makes for some very nice trading, but the window has generally been short, and 2 or 3 days or so at a time. Another one has been Waves, just continues to power higher here after it broke out of that prior high a few days ago. Just has these small pauses, and the volume just continues to expand as this goes higher here. It is seeing some selling pressure showing up here. Look at this big volume reversal here near the top. Although that's a green candle there, there's a big wick. The following candle was a big red candle, almost the same volume there. And so I would be cautious at this point. That's starting to signal some climactic buying action. The type of action you see at the tops of moves, the highest volume since this entire rally that we've seen here over the last couple of weeks. And so Waves is starting to look a little toppy, but you could have said that was the case back here and has just continued to run. But at this point, I think the move is starting to run its course here. Definitely extended, but what a strong trend that has been in here. But all in all, it's been a strong couple of days. If we just cycle very quickly through some of the other names I've had on my watch list here, Quantum, just seeing these big spikes higher, a lot of volume coming in as that happens. Tron finally broke out, and it was funny because I lost patience with Tron. I was holding this one for the better part of a week, and it was profitable, but not by much. It was just kind of edging up very slowly, and I kid you not, I sold it yesterday, and then the next day after the close of the candle saw that big spike higher. Just was not patient enough with that one. Not complaining, I guess. I had a few other trades that worked okay, but it's always funny because they pop as soon as you sell them. And it was just more a lack of patience than it was seeing sell signals on this guy here. But Tron did finally clear a little bit of resistance. Big wick at the top though, seeing some selling again on that one. If you go to the 1 hour chart, getting pretty choppy here near the highs. Don't generally like to see that. You like to see them break out, maybe be a little bit more constructive as they pull back and then show another leg higher. And this one's just getting a little bit choppy there. Cardano was another one that broke out here and just has been stair-stepping higher. Broke out here, consolidated yesterday. This was the secondary entry that I was looking at here as prices were starting to narrow there. And when it broke out, jumped in on this one, and again, very quickly went to the target and then just got real choppy. And it's looking like it wants to roll over here. So most of these are starting to get a little bit more volatile. They were extended. They've had a good run. If you look at this example from the lows here from a couple of days ago, it was up 13%, not a monster move, but outperforming Bitcoin as Bitcoin has gone up 25%. So keep that in mind. These charts are versus BTC, which is exactly what you want to see happen. You want to be trading these alts that are outperforming Bitcoin as Bitcoin is rallying, because it's a little bit of a double whammy there, and so you're kind of getting that extra gain on top of the regular gain that Bitcoin is doing. So that's generally my preference. I look at BTC price action as a directional kind of indicator, but ultimately I'm looking for those alts that are going to outperform and break out versus BTC. Ripple looking like it was breaking higher yesterday and just rolling back over. Big strong move to the downside here today. So a lot of these are starting to really break down as Bitcoin pulls in. And so the story is going to be the same for most of the bigger cap names. They were very strong here for a few days, starting to pause here. EOS was a trade I was in earlier in the week, closed that one out as it hit my target and has just kind of been pausing and pulling back here since then. So not going to write them off. I'm looking at some of these as potential secondary entries, but what I'm going to be looking for are those that are pulling back a little bit more constructively. This one is a good example, right? You don't want the real choppy ones that are just kind of really selling off hard, giving up all the gains. The ones that are pausing here, maybe holding up above some moving averages or some key Fibonacci retracement levels. Those are the ones that are going to be on my radar, the ones that are holding up better than most. So just going to be watching Bitcoin for now. Let's go back to that chart here. And just going to be paying attention to where the pullback lands, where we start to see a potential new low being set and some buying volume start coming back in. So patience for now. Just going to sit tight, let this one play out. We are approaching a holiday here. Christmas is next week, and I would imagine things are going to slow down. So it was a nice way to start the week this week, and looking for a little bit of time off here over the weekend and into next week. So maybe all you got to do is just sit tight and enjoy a little bit of R&R, some family and friend time. But I will post an update here next week, or even before the end of this week, depending on how the market progresses. So until then, thanks for watching, guys. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Talk to you next time. Take care.